The Treasurer, a ship that slipped through the dark waters of the Atlantic Ocean in January of 1619 and headed towards the Bermuda Island, a conspicuous colonial vessel hidden among the tall, long shadows of the Caribbean Sea, where she would sit and wait and be joined by another hunter, a Dutch man of war. Called the Fleming, made up of both English and Dutch crew. These two ships, the Treasurer and the Fleming, would set off together on a hunt to spill Spanish blood and to confiscate her provisions of food and water and slaves. They scanned the horizon until the San Juan Bautista came into view. They emerged from the fog. These two ships closed quickly until their guns and cannons were in range. Unfortunately, a veil of secrecy hid the details of what happened that fateful day. For you see, what transpired was clandestine, illegal, and straight piracy. And these two ships, the Treasurer and the Fleming, would soon discover the magnitude of their brazen acts. And as they turned and made their way back to Jamestown, Virginia, both ships had payloads of Negro slaves. Now, the Fleming would arrive first, just outside of Jamestown, Virginia, at Point Comfort, for she reached the port just a few days ahead of the Treasurer, where she would unload her now infamous 20 and odd Negroes. The names of which are only partially known. However, even less is known of the slaves that were aboard the Treasurer, who reached Point Comfort a few days after the Fleming. You see, her slaves aren't even listed in history books at all. Now, there are some rumors that these slaves were turned back and sent to another location, while other historians are convinced that the slaves aboard the Treasurer also disembarked at Jamestown. Either way, these enslaved people would be the cause of a great scandal that would reverberate across England, Spain, and the Netherlands. Because during the time of the raid, both England, Dutch had treaties with Spain not to raid their ships. And this act was a breach of the truce. And as far as the colony was concerned, they could deny any association with the Fleming. However, the Treasurer was their ship, and it would undoubtedly lead Spain right back to Jamestown. And this caused great fear in Jamestown and was the reason they sent the Treasurer away from the colony. However, what do we know about the 20 and odd Negroes that were aboard the Fleming that did disembark at Jamestown, Virginia? What were their names and who were they? Jamestown, Virginia. James, derived from the name Jacob. In other words, Jamestown, Virginia, actually means Jacob's Town. And in this town of Jacob, we witnessed the arrival of 20 and odd Negroes in the fall of 1619. And it hides a great secret. You see, we know that these slaves were originally carried aboard a Spanish ship called the San Juan Batista. And we also know that some of these slaves had Spanish names, some of whom retained even after living among English settlers for years. And so, by name, many of these slaves were simply listed as Negro or a Negro. However, out of all the slaves listed on that fateful ship, on that fateful day, only 2 of the slaves are listed by first name and last name. Spanish first names and last name. Referred to as the first black settlers of Jamestown, Virginia. And their names were Anthony and Isabella Negro, as in Yaya Negro, the sons of King David, who lived in Spain and Portugal, landed in Jamestown in 1619, where they would be enslaved and persecuted for 400 years. Shalom, shalom, Israel. Peace and blessings, peace and blessings. Hopefully everyone's doing well. Shalom, shalom. Welcome to everybody that's in the chat, everyone that's logging in. Peace and blessings. Shalom, shalom to the moderators. Shalom to Mishpachah. That's family in Hebrew, if you don't know. Shalom, shalom to everyone. Hey, thanks for dialing in, family. Or thanks for joining us. Family, I got to tell you that 1619 is a paradigm shift. A paradigm shift. This lesson on 1519. What I tell people that, family, with us being the descendant of those who have lost their history, like when we came up, our history was taught to us by those who enslaved us. And, we would be foolish to think that our enslavers would teach us everything about our history. And sure enough, family, I'm telling you, when we start to look at the old books, we start to put the pieces of our history together. And we start to string together of what I call paradigm shifts, right? Shifts of major monumental change in thought and direction. And, just to kind of go over just a few of the paradigm shifts, just real quick, family. And that is, at first, when we were taught our history, going back to elementary school, our history would always start with the transatlantic slave trade. It would always start with Africa and slavery. So a paradigm shift, family, was just to simply ask what I call a common sense question. Well, what happened before the transatlantic slave trade? Like, we were taught in our school books that, okay, well, Portugal and Spain, they were the ones that started it. But very few people, I can't say that I was the first one or anybody that's walking around today was the first one. And in fact, when you look at some of these old books, family, what you'll find is that there were a few people that were plugged into what happened, to our people, going all the way back past the transatlantic slave trade. And, what they did, family, was that some of them, I want to say J.A. Rogers, I know he's a contemporary, but J.A. Rogers was one that he pointed to Spain and Portugal. He pointed to the history that happened in Spain and Portugal just before the start of the transatlantic slave trade. Because it's one of those things, family, where what happened in Spain and Portugal in the 1400s and the 1300s, but in particularly the 1400s, you're talking about an event of biblical proportions. Like, if you've heard of Spain, the expulsion edicts of Spain in 1492, old historians will when they tell you that, okay, well, the Spanish monarchs kicked out their Jews, right? First of all, when you do the research, you look at the old references, you discover that the Israelites, I'm using, the term Jews because that's what contemporary historians use. So for the purpose of the lessons, I will refer to them as Jews. But when you look at the old books family, when I say old books, I'm talking about books that were published, from the roughly the 1850s or older. And you look at the description of the Jews that were in those books of Spain and Portugal, they consistently, and this is across the board, right? They consistently describe the Jews of Spain and Portugal as black, not full stop. Black, swarthy, dark skinned, like any synonym, adjective that you can think of to describe a black person, they got it, right? And looking at these old books, family, going through that history, we discovered that the Jews living in Spain and Portugal just before the start of the transatlantic slave trade they were massive, right? Some historians will, they tend to quote numbers of roughly like 800,000 people. You have to understand like how large a community of 800,000 people looks like. And just to give you a comparison, on any given Sunday, when you look at a football game or a college football game, and you look at the stadium, most of those stadiums, family, their maximum capacity is around 90,000 or 80,000 people. Maybe 100,000, but usually it's around 90,000 or 80,000 people. So what you're talking about, family, is in one day, when Spain had given their expulsion edict of 1492, that 9 football stadiums filled to the brim with people, with fans, all let out at the same time. You have to picture what that mass exodus of people looked like. And across the board, family, when you look at the history books, this was a major event talked about in different books, different historians. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone except for those that teach our history over in the United States. Come on now. Everyone's teaching us except for the historians over in the United States. Because one, we would find out that, hey, well, wow, there's a lot of people that are leaving Spain and Portugal. Two, well, they're black as well. And three, one of the things that most high willing we'll talk about in this lesson, they were called Negroes. They were called Negroes. And so it doesn't take a rocket scientist to put the pieces together to say, hey, well, you got a people in Spain and Portugal just before the transatlantic slave trade. They were called Negroes. And then four, family, they were sent. A lot of them were sent to the west coast of Africa, to the exact same places where the transatlantic slave trade kicked off. Again, all these pieces are connecting. All these dots are connecting. But long story short, family, that was a paradigm shift. Connecting the history, before the transatlantic slave trade to our history, so-called African Americans, that was a paradigm shift. Another paradigm shift, family, was, and again, in hindsight, family, all of these, in my estimation, were common sense paradigm shifts. Like the other paradigm shift was, all right, so we were told about the transatlantic slave trade, but none of us actually took the time to actually look at the law that authorized it and governed it. So if you don't know, Portugal was given the west coast of Africa by the authority of the Pope. And so it was the Portuguese king that issued edicts, decrees that governed slavery on the west coast of Africa. None of us thought to look at the laws that he issued and decreed. Why? Well, because if we did, we would know that those laws, and this is across the board, this is again one of those historical facts that's not disputed. Like it's not disputed that King Manuel issued laws that govern the west coast of Africa. Like the Manuelian ordinances is well documented, not disputed. Two, the Manuelian ordinances, the primary people that the Manuelian ordinances was written for was the Jews. Family, like that too is one of those facts that is not disputed, is not really up for debate. It is what it is. It's only up for debate once you try to start to apply it to you. right? Once you start to try to apply that to African Americans, then that's when people say, whoa, 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 hang on a second, right? That's when people start having problems with it. But in any event, family, that was a paradigm shift, right? Paradigm shift. And then the other paradigm shift, like that was two. So again, first paradigm shift we talked about was tying the history in Spain and Portugal, like just before the transatlantic slave trade. That was one. Second paradigm shift was the actual reading of the Manuelian ordinances, which was the laws that govern slavery on the west coast of Africa, which, you know, in itself, historians acknowledge that those laws were written for Jews. You might have to grab a book written in Portuguese to confirm it, but it is there, right? So that's the second paradigm shift. And then the third paradigm shift has to do with the sons of King David. What we discovered was in Portugal and in Spain, there was a people that called themselves Negro, that were the descendants of King David, right? So at some point in time, there was a family called the Yayas. The Yaya lineage goes all the way back to King David, and Most High willing, I just have a few slides on that, but we might as well touch on that here. So they have a lineage that goes all the way back to King David, and they have a practice and a how can I put it, a culture of using the last name of Negro. Like whatever their first name is, they will append the last name Negro in their name. So when you go through, you know, some of these documents, you'll start to see things like Judah Negro or David Negro or Solomon Negro, right? Or forgot the other person's name, like Godalbe Negro. Like throughout all these books, Negroes. So that's why it's key, family, because people that had the last name of Negro in Spain and Portugal, their lineage goes back to King David. That's, and Most High willing, we're going to look that up in the Sephardic dictionary, right? And then so that is a paradigm shift. That was the third paradigm shift. And then so fast forward to today, family, we are at the fourth paradigm shift, and the fourth paradigm shift has to do with what was right in front of our face the whole time, and that is that the very first African American family in what would become the United States of America, they were called Anthony and Isabella Negro. They had the last name of Negro, and they came from Spain. That's also what's missing. And I'm going to show you how we can connect the dots. And that's one thing, family. Like whenever we go through our, a lot of these videos have a subset of the references, right? We can only put so many references in videos, or else it'll start to look like a college lecture. And that's not the purpose of the videos, right? Purpose of the videos, there's a entertainment aspect of it. So we have to stay on message throughout the video. But in lessons like this, which is kind of more of a lecture format, we can kind of deviate, and I can give you a little bit more of the videos that are behind the scenes that help put together the first video. So that's what this 1619 Decoded lesson is going to be about. It's going to be about going through some additional videos and references that weren't shown in the in the initial 1619 video that will you may find surprising. You may find surprising, but basically, family, we are on our fourth paradigm shift, and that is the identification of the very first slaves, doing air quotes, slaves that came over in 1619. And why 1619 is the date. It is the date for the start of the 400-year prophecy. There's nothing else that comes close to it. I mean, we'll put this out there, wait to, give people and some mores and some Bible scholars chances to go off and do their research. But at the time of this video, there's no other 400-year prophecy date that sticks other than 1619, because that is the only one that adheres to the pattern that we see in the Bible, with the Most High dealing with kings when it comes to the persecution of the people of Israel, or even nations in general. The only one. So we'll leave it at that. All right. Well, I kind of clicked the wrong button a little bit, family, as far as like the order of my videos. I really didn't anticipate or didn't plan on playing that last clip until a little bit later, because I did want to go through a couple of commercials really quick, because I just do want to give a shout out to some of our mishpachah, some of our brothers, one of which, and oh, hey, family, I apologize. I kind of just rambled on. So hopefully the audio sounds okay. I guess if I didn't, I would have gotten some frowny face emojis in the chat. So if just to do a quick sound check, family, audios, if it's fine, if you could please just put a quick one. Thank you. All right, just want to make sure. All right, make sure I'm not talking to mute or something like that. All right. Well, let me just I just want to share a few things with your family. One is just to let you know, anytime we have mishpachah or family within Israel that offers a service, I do want to let you know. So one such mishpachah is Mori Vaughn. He's mishpachah over here in the South. So this is Mori Vaughn. He offers a product called Caribbean Kitchen. It's a seasoning, Hebrew seasoning, kosher seasoning that's low in sodium. If you know anything about, if you're watching your sodium, these are the seasonings to get, because if you want your food to taste good nowadays, they load it up with salt. Well, now you got an alternative. So let me just put this out here and show you what Mori Vaughn has out to offer.
Order up.
Caribbean Kitchen Foods offer 7 unique blends of premium, low-sodium Jamaican seasoning that will add a burst of flavor to your dishes. Our authentic, all-natural Jamaican seasonings are a game changer when it comes to adding a burst of flavor to your dishes. Our products are kosher, all-natural, contains ingredients that are gluten-free and GMO-free. Our seasonings are handcrafted with the highest quality ingredients. We source our ingredients from the Caribbean to capture the authentic taste of the islands. Unleash your creativity in the kitchen and savor the taste of the Caribbean with our spice blends. Enjoy our variety of seasonings that are flavor-packed to deliver the best taste for your dishes. Get ready to create delicious meals that will excite your taste buds and leave your guests asking for more. Try our exclusive curry and jerk seasonings for an extraordinary cooking experience. Our blends are an excellent choice for chicken, meat, fish, and vegan dishes. Add a burst of flavor to your cooking with our top quality Jamaican seasonings. Grab one of our bundles and enjoy the taste of the islands.
All right. Well, so if you're trying to watch your sodium intake, check out Caribbean Kitchen. That's by Mori Vaughn, and yeah, he has great product. I think he's up to probably 10 or 12 product offerings on his site. So just give him a look over, family. Check out his website. I'm sure you'll find something that suits your needs. All right. Well, that's Mori Vaughn. That's Caribbean Kitchen. The other brother I just want you all to check out, and this is our brother Godfrey in Charleston, South Carolina. I don't know if you all have ever been to Charleston, South Carolina. Beautiful city, family, beautiful history. The history is amazing, but when you go there, you have to know who's going to give you the right history. Because when I was talking to Brother Godfrey, he made this crazy point, and that is, when you go to Charleston, the history of which is steep in the history of slavery, of African slavery, and they have various people giving tours and teaching the history on these tours, and there's only 2 black people out of all these various tour companies. There's only 2 black people, or so-called African American people, that are tour guides. Can you imagine someone of a different race teaching the history of the so-called black man? When are we going to get to the point, family, where we can have someone of our own teach our own history. And I got to tell you, family, between the other, African American that does the teaching, Brother Godfrey is the one that teaches. He literally has a teaching about Hebrews to Negroes, or Negroes to Hebrews. You got to check out his website. So let me just run this quick promotion so that you can hear from Brother Godfrey himself.
Come experience the difference at Gullah Geechee Tours. Come learn the truth about the history of Charleston.
You go plant the grapes, you will have none of the wine.
We can coordinate your tours from beginning to end, from sightseeing walking tours, bus tours, plantation tours.
Plantation historic site. I understand we have some Charleston tour royalty in the crowd. Let's give a hand to this brother back here.
We will facilitate event hall rentals, ancient cultural demonstrations. The experience would not be complete without visiting Edisto Island's International Gullah Geechee Museum and Healing Center, enjoying youth recreation, cultural music and dance, and delicious Southern cooking by Chef Denise Ravenel, granddaughter of the renowned author and chef Emily Meggett.
Food is delicious. The chicken is very well flavored and fresh, and the fish is to die for.
All right. Well, that's Gullah Geechee Tours. Gullah Geechee Tours. Make sure you ask for Brother Godfrey's tour, because let me tell you, family, Brother Godfrey, what they're trying to do, family, and this is actually, let me make sure this one's off stage here. What they're trying to do, family, is because Brother Godfrey does teach about the Israelite history in his tours. He's the only one that does it. Because he does it, they don't like him doing that. So what the official, I want to say that, like, the visitor center in Charleston, what they'll do is that if you go into the visitor center at Charleston, and this is where you go in there and they have all these different pamphlets. They got an informational desk with the concierge behind the desk. And if you were to walk up to the desk and say, hey, do you have any tours on Gullah Geechee history? And they'll say, yeah, and let me go and grab you a flyer. What they'll do, family, is that they will hand you everybody else's flyer except for Godfrey's. And this is how they're freezing him out of that industry, right? And it's having an impact on his business. So, and all because he's teaching that we are the people of the book. So with that being said, family, please, if you have any plans to go to Charleston, South Carolina anytime soon, or in the future, just make sure, if you can remember, to look for Brother Godfrey's Gullah Geechee tour. He will give you information that no one else will, right? That we are the people of the book, and he'll, again, his tours are outstanding. Actually, me and my family, we actually took one of his tours as well, and it's an outstanding tour. So just make sure you do that, family. Like I said, they're trying to freeze them out, trying to send everyone to all the other tours except for his, only because, or just because, he teaches that so-called black folks are the people of the book. All right. Well, but you might ask, well, and this is one of the things that we have to deal with, family, because, there's a narrative out there that the people of Israel are not black, right? That if you're black, right, that you're some sort of alien when it comes to, this Israelite identity. But let's take a quick look at that, family.
People that are claiming to be Israelis, Israelites, all this new crazy wave that is waking up, and they're claiming we are the real Jews, you're fake Jews. For me, it's so funny. Why is it so funny? I don't mind that you're claiming to be Jews. Like, truly, be'emet, from the bottom of my heart, I couldn't care less. You want to claim to be Jews? Claim to be Jewish. Maybe you have Israeli roots. I'm not saying that you do not. Truly, be'emet, I don't care. But why to stand up and to start saying, oh no, you're Ashkenazi. Oh no, you're white. Oh no, you're this. Oh no, you're that. Guys, listen, you don't have a clue of your own history. But look at us, listen, carefully, deep into your souls, listen. We know the history. You want to start making jokes and fun about the Jews, the Ashkenazi ones with disciples, the peot. You think you know something? One day you're going to see that Avraham Avinu was also walking with those beautiful side curls. You're going to see that Yitzchak, Isaac, was also going with those beautiful side curls. You will see that Yaakov Avinu had the face of an angel. The face of Yaakov with two beautiful side curls are carved on the throne of honor. You will be ashamed of yourself for even bringing it to your mouth that we are fake Jews.
Shalom, family. Have you ever wondered who's the alien? You know, who's from here and who's from someplace else. Like, who's from the land of Israel and who's not? Who's from the land of Mount Seir and who's from the Caucasus Mountains? You know, who's the alien?
So let's continue down the line. We've got more slaves that are leaving the city. Now somebody tell me the difference between this guy and this guy. Whose side do you think this guy's on? The Assyrians, yeah, the conquerors, the Assyrians. And whose side do you think this guy's on? The slave, yeah, the people from Israel or Lachish. You can tell also by their distinctive hairstyle depicted in archaeology.
You can oftentimes tell who's the alien based on how one looks. Like, who matches the stone depictions of Israel etched in stone around 700 BC? And who doesn't? And then, based on the facts, then you tell me who's the alien. There's plenty of references out there that proves who the true children of Israel are. And in fact, actually, let me bring this up really quick. Lots of good information that's out there. One such piece of information is, if you haven't gotten it, there's a book called Israelite History, Claims, and Culture by our brother Dante Fortson. This is Israelite History, Claims, and Culture. In his book, if for those of you who haven't gotten it yet, and again, this is available at Amazon and other outlets, this book family quotes old references that show or give proof of who the Israelites are. Like, what do they look like? And again, consistently across the board, they are described as black, swarthy, dark-skinned people, full stop, across the board, right? All these old references. Our problem is, family, is that, in the past, we had a tendency of not looking at these old books. We had a tendency of looking at the contemporary books. And unfortunately, those books have a different narrative than the old books. All right. Well, enough of that, family. Well, just like I said, just wanted to kind of bring us up to speed, wanted to introduce our brothers that are offering some products. And with that, let's just get into the lesson, because I do want to just try to get through this quickly, because I try to make it less than an hour. I hadn't been able to do that lately, but most I will and we'll do that this time. So again, all right, so background on this, family, the 1619 video that came out, we're only able to put so many references in there. There are more references that I do want to share with you, just to show you that there's some additional information that you probably want to check out. All right. So the excuse me. So the video that we watched starting off, family, where we saw that in 1619, we saw that the people that the first African family that landed in Jamestown, Virginia was Anthony Negro and Isabel Negro. And in fact, this is on the muster rolls. Like, so the census in Virginia was called a muster, right? A muster roll. And I got to tell you, family, it is tough to get access to the original muster roll, because all these, I mean, there are books that reference the muster roll, but the books that reference the muster roll do some funny business with the names on the muster roll. Like, for instance, with Anthony Negro and Isabel Negro, what they do in these books, family, is that they will rewrite his last name so that it looks like a description and not a last name. Like on the muster roll, it's listed as a last name, but in contemporary books, they'll say Anthony, and then they'll have like either Negro in all caps, or they'll have Negro in quotes or something like that. But if you look at the original has first name, last name, Negro. And this was one of those references that we brought, that was read or reviewed in the video. And you can see here, family, it's the Park Ethnography Program. Off to the right, you'll see U.S. Department of the Interior. And this is what I read, and it says the first African-American family, Anthony Negro and Isabel Negro and William, their child, baptized. That's important. One of the things, Most High Willing, family, what I'll do is review the context with you. Context is key. Because when you know the history, you know the significance of certain things. Like when you see that the child baptized, if you've read, or if you've checked out some of our old videos about when the Israelites in Spain and Portugal, when they were persecuted, and particularly in Portugal, you'll notice that their children were taken from them, and the children were baptized. So when you see this, Anthony Negro and Isabel Negro, then it has child baptized. This lines up with the history that happened in the early or the late 1500s and the early in the late 1400s and the early 1500s. The children were taken from their parents and they were forcefully baptized. Hallelujah. It all lines up, family. And then another thing that we read, I just wanted to provide some additional information. And this was just one of those references where you can see it. It says in 1625, Anthony and Isabel had a son named William. The 1625 muster identifies the family as Anthony Negro and Isabel Negro. Again, the Negroes have a history which goes back to King David. But anyway, it says, and William, their child baptized. Child baptized. That's the history of the Jews in Spain and Portugal, was that their children were taken from them and their children were baptized. What happened, family, was you did have a handful, well, I say handful, you did have some Israelites that chose to accept Christianity in order to be reunited with their baptized child, right? And you can see that in some of the references as well. And just put this on for repetition. Just wanted to make sure that that you can see that there's multiple references that show that Anthony Negro and Isabel Negro are referenced, right, as first name, last name. It says it's how they were known in the 1625 ledger of Captain William Tucker of Elizabeth City, Virginia. And I forgot, my bad, family, I forgot to put a video in here there about the Tuckers in Charleston, South Carolina. Because there's a belief within the Tucker family that there's some a black family or family called the Tuckers, which live, I don't know if they live in Charleston, South Carolina, but I say Charleston, but I mean Jamestown, Virginia. But they believe that they are the descendants of Anthony and Isabel Negro because they have a last name of Tucker. That's based off of a premise or idea, a notion that's been disproven, and that is the idea or the notion that when slaves were freed from their masters, that when slaves were freed from the people that beat them down, causing them to work from sun up to sundown, cut off limbs, raped their wives, killed their unalived their men, right? Did all this wicked, evil stuff from them, cut off noses and ears and ate their body parts and burned, hung them on trees and had picnics and all this stuff. That after all that, when we got our freedom, the first thing we wanted to do was name our children after our oppressors, after the people that have treated us worse than anybody on planet Earth. I don't subscribe to that. I don't subscribe to that. And not only that, there is a book, and that's why I say I apologize, because I forgot to include that part in here. But I did. There is a book that's out there that speaks to this fact too. In other words, basically what the book says, it says that, and this was like under court order, a slave master was required to admit that slaves, whenever they gave their surnames or their last names, that their surnames were often not the name of their slave masters, but was a name I think they say, how to put it, they said an older name, an older family name. Because by law, family, slaves were not allowed to have last names. Why would they do that? Because they were trying to disconnect us from our history. But our forefathers retained their names. So basically, after slavery, a lot of them just went back to their older names, like to the old family names. I have a reference on that. And again, I apologize for not putting that in there, because I did want to speak about the Tucker family and the premise of their belief that they are connected to the Anthony and Isabella Negro, because they have the last name of William Tucker, who was the name of Anthony Negro's slave master, so to speak. So they believe that that they were Anthony Negro. But again, according to the documents that we have, that is not the case. That slaves, more than not, when they left their masters, the last thing that they wanted to do was name their kids or their families after the people that beat them, raped them, cut off limbs, and hung them and burned them on trees. All right. Well, a couple of additional things I wanted to show you was that even in Ancestry.com. So Ancestry.com, if you don't know, is good for looking up people, right? If you want to try to find family trees and stuff like that, you can go to Ancestry.com. And if you go to Ancestry.com, you will find William Negro, Anthony Negro, and Isabel Negro entries in Ancestry.com. And they will also point you to the papers of where the documents are located. And actually, the public records for Anthony Negro, that actual muster roll, is in London. That muster roll was lent to an institution here in the United States, where they made microfilm copies and that sort of thing, but it belongs in London, right? But there are copies that are floating around out there. They're hard to find, but they're out there, and that's actually what I got a screenshot of, and I shared in the video. So just know that it's hard to find, family. All right, so just wanted to show you. So not only were the Anthony Negro and Isabel Negro, but also, if you look at the date on this is from 1790, that even in 1790, you still had people called Negro, right? Called Negro. And this is in Massachusetts, right? And so one of the things I'm not sure if we're going to do it in the next lesson or the lesson after this one, but one of the things we want to do is track down the Negroes. Did they change their name to Black? Because, Negro is a Spanish name, but did they eventually switch and start using the American name, right? Or did they use something else? That will be interesting when we take a look at it. So one of the things I shared, family, and bear with me just for a second. I just want to pause here just to take a quick look in the chat, make sure I'm not missing anything. All right, there we go. All right, so as I said before, family, the Yayas took on the last name of Negro. You can actually find this in the Jewish Encyclopedia, among other places. This is just one of many places where you can find that the Yayas took on the last name of Negro. Some references, of course, will go into greater detail than others. This one does a pretty good job, I believe, where it says, Yaya, Portuguese family of the Middle Ages, members of which were prominent in Portugal, Spain, and Italy. Certain individuals of the family bore the additional cognomen Negro, with with reference to the Moors from whom several of their estates had been obtained. The more prominent members of the family are as known. So a couple of things to note here, family, is that the Negro family was a massive family, large family, right? Not only that, they were put in charge of all the Jews in Spain and Portugal. So they were the governors. They were the head rabbis, right? So all the 900,000, a million or so Jews in Spain and Portugal, if you were to say the word Negro, they would immediately know who you're talking about, and they would immediately know that you're talking about a family whose lineage goes back to King David. And actually, let me pause here for a second, family. I just want to show you something really quick, because not only, family, did they have the last name of Negro, but when you look at Spain and Portugal, or especially Portugal, you'll find places called Negro. I mean, they're still called Negro today. So let me show you this clip really quick. And this is a clip of the town of Negro, right? A town in Portugal called Negro, filled with people with the last name of Negro, before the start of the transatlantic slave trade. You got to let that sink in, family. A town called Negro, filled with people who had last names of Negro, before the start of the transatlantic slave trade. All right. Well, when you take a look at those pictures, family, you have to keep in mind, picture a bustling little town filled with black folks called Negroes. Like, they were literally called Negroes. And what you also have to keep in mind too, family, is that these people were the descendants of King David. So the houses you saw, the roads you saw, the vineyards that you saw belonged to the descendants of King David just before the start of the transatlantic slave trade. However, there were expulsion edicts. There was the Inquisition. You had the massive expulsion of the Jews, which caused a lot of these cities, a lot of these towns in Portugal to become empty and desolate, which they're still empty today. Check this out.
People know Portugal by the coast, cities like Lisbon, Porto, Braga, the Algarve, but people forget about the inland of Portugal. And this area is really different from the coast. Here you have way less people, you have a lot of abandoned villages and a lot of different villages, like this one. The first thing you notice is, first, really pretty village, but second, it's really empty. Look, there's no one there. On the other street there's no one. Behind me, no one. Over there, no one. So yeah, this is life in here. Empty, quite peaceful. In Portugal, there are many villages that are semi-empty or even abandoned. In my research, I found this village called Covelo do Monte. Because it has been abandoned for over 50 years, it was put up for sale. But I think no one bought it because it remains abandoned. So welcome to Covelo do Monte. It's a place that has been 50 years since no one lives here, and that's why they put this place to sell. I confess I was a little scared. I don't know if I was afraid of spirits or crackheads, but right away I saw that it is a very beautiful village. If you stop to think, this in a renovation would be an incredible village. I think now we are in the middle of the village. It goes down there. It's a big village. It goes down there, all the way up there as well that we came from. All these big houses made by stones, and maybe there are some people that come here now and then. A lot of people.
So as you can see, family, there are places in Portugal today. Yeah, he said crackheads, J. Jax. He said crackheads. You didn't know it's one of the crackheads going to pop out on, I guess. But yeah, so this history lines up with the books, I guess, family, is what I'm trying to tell you. And these are places where, you know, your forefathers were, right? When you take a look at all these abandoned villages and family, it's part of the curses. I mean, part of the curses is that our towns and cities would be desolate when we didn't do, or our forefathers didn't do what they're supposed to do, right? The curses would follow them. You know, they found a respite or a haven in, you know, Portugal and Spain for a little while, but then the curses showed up, kicked them out, right? So it is what it is, family. It is what it is. All right, so let me bring back the presentation here, family. So again, and this is one of the things we show people too, families, that, you know, not only did they have a last name of Negro, and they, you know, the Israelites of Spain and Portugal said that their lineage is the house of Judah, right, which is Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, the house of Judah as a whole, which contains the kings of, or the sons of David, right? Tribes of house of Judah, Benjamin, Levi, including the sons of David. But in any case, we can actually see pictures of the tribe of Judah at the Lachish relief, and I know you've seen this a million times, but I have to, like I told you, family, we gotta review it, or else there'll be people in the comments talking about, you know, Jews look like surfer dudes. No, they don't. This is what you're looking at on the screen is a ancient depiction of the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Judah. So this includes the folks that was living in Jerusalem, right? And as you can see, the hair is short and nappy, not the long locks like that gentleman was saying in that clip, but on these ancient depictions of Israelites, they were short and woolly. They looked like like I said, little baby Afro Duncan Kyrie Bruce, right? That's what they look like. And then another thing, family, just wanted to share with you too, is that oftentimes when you're going through these books, and this book was in a different language, but just wanted to show you that when you go through these books, you'll see that the descendants of Yaya start to replace their last names of Negroes. In other words, instead of using like David Yaya Negro, they will just drop the Yaya altogether and just start using Negro. Like Negro was their last name. And you can see it on the screen, David Negro, Gildala Negro, Judah Negro. Like that was their name going around to Portugal just before the start of the transatlantic slave trade. And you can see that here, same names, right? David and Judah Negro. So just wanted to show you in different books, different references, that they did indeed use the last name of Negro, right? Just one after the other, after the other. And another important one, family, this is a Sephardic dictionary, surname dictionary. So basically, you can think of it as a dictionary of all the last names that the Jews of Spain and Portugal use. They try to capture that in this book. And this is a book, like I said, I think the last time I checked, I think it was about $100. I'm not sure what it is now. But this book has all the last names, or attempts to capture all the last names of the Jews that were in Spain and Portugal. Doesn't have all of them, but they try to, at least they make an attempt to do it. And just wanted to show you that Negro is in the book, because Negro is a Israelite name. That's what it is, family. In Spain and Portugal, Israel is an Israelite name. Not only that, when you look up the entry, you'll find that, I've highlighted here in green where it says before, and what these, if you're kind of wondering what these, I guess you can call these acronyms in caps mean. This is in reference to where the references of where this information came from. I mean, there's like a legend where you can look this stuff up, but you'll see there where it says Yaya. Negro before 1400s, Yaya over to the right, right? So Negro literally means Yaya, and in that same book, when you go to look up Yaya, it points back to Negro. So and it also gives the sons, right? Ben Yaya, or son of Yaya, David, son of Joseph, son of Yaya, right? And then it kind of lists some other people. But Yaya means Negro, and Negro means Yaya. And there's a genealogy representation in this German book, which shows the lineage all the way down from King David all the way down to Yaya, which is number, let's see here. On this one, it's number 47. It's kind of hard. I know it's kind of hard to see. It's not in focus, but it's number 47. Number 47 says Jachaya, but that's Yaya. It's Jachaya in German, but it's Yaya in Hebrew. So we actually have a lineage, a branch, showing that Yaya goes all the way back to King David. And this is just to show some of the branches from Yaya. And then another important fact, family, is that when the Israelites or the Jews came to Spain and Portugal, there is a history behind it, because according to their own history, what they say is that they came there in waves. Like there were different migrations or expulsions or whatever you want to call it, but different waves or migrations to Spain. And one of the first migrations had to do with King Nebuchadnezzar. And this is, it says, it says, whence we may learn, if we can believe it, that a king of Spain who had assisted Nebuchadnezzar in reducing Jerusalem brought an enormous population into Spain, all from either the family of David or at least from the tribe of Judah, and that the royal family resided first in Seville. We're going to talk about Seville. That's key. It says, then in Granada. Why is Granada important? Because Granada is the last place that was turned over to the Christian monarchs in 1492 before they were expelled. So it shows you that the sons of King David were in Granada. And guess what? When, many of us, if you were to take a DNA test and use a DNA site called My True Ancestry, and what they do, family, is that they go around to these archaeological sites. And in those archaeological sites, in some of those sites, they're able to extract DNA from, tooth or, bones and stuff like that. And what they'll do is that they'll put all that data into a database, and then they'll allow you to compare your DNA to that ancient DNA that they dug up from the ground. And what they're finding out is they did that in Granada, Spain. And there are many, many, many Israelites, such as myself, who have matches. We match a sample, an ancient sample that was taken in Granada. And the city of Granada actually had the name, it was also called Jewstown, because that was one of the towns that was fully turned over to the Jews. So we have DNA match for Granada, and also in Granada, Spain was also one of the last places that the sons of King David were, which is the place that was turned over to the Christian monarchs in 1492 before they were expelled. Okay, so like I said, the purpose of this, family, is just to show you that the migration of the Israelites, of the sons of David, over into Seville, Spain. I mean, they were, we were over in Spain and Portugal, but what I want to do, family, is focus on Spain and Portugal. Spain and Portugal. All right. So this is just another reference that talks about the Spanish Jews, where it says, if you kind of look at the green part, it says the Spanish Jews maintained that they had been transported hither after the destruction of the temple by the Babylonian conqueror Nebuchadnezzar. Certain Jewish families, the Ibn Dauds and the Abarbanels, both. Now, Ibn Dauds, that means the sons of David. That's what Ibn means, son. So the sons of David and the Abarbanels both descent from the royal house of David, and maintain that their descendants, or that their ancestors, had been settled since time immemorial, partly in the district of Lucena and partly in the environs of Toledo and Seville. So Seville is key, family. Why is Seville key? All right, let me show you. What you're looking at is a Google map of Seville. So if you don't know, Seville literally has a river running through it. It has a river running through it, and it has boat docks, right? So there's a reason why it has boat docks in Seville. So on the top left, you'll see a little highlighted section. That section, family, is where the headquarters of the Inquisition was located. The headquarters of the Inquisition was located on the top left. It was a massive, massive structure. It was literally a castle sitting on a hill. It was a foreboding structure, family. And this is where, when the Inquisition went out and persecuted, arrested folks, they were taken to this location. When they were, burned and tortured and all that stuff, that happened right here on the top left. The Inquisition. Headquarters of the Spanish Inquisition right there. Why is that important? Well, over to the right, so once you cross over the bridge, and there was a bridge around the 1600s, and then you go over to the right, the first highlighted area. So there's some docks off to the left of that highlighted area, right? But then, you got the highlighted area, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. I think it's like, I'll just say Real-Ease or something like that. That, family, was the location of the Casa de Contratacion de la Indias. If you don't know what that is, every single black, brown person that was taken in the transatlantic slave trade under the Asiento, the authority of the Pope, was done so through the Casa de Contratacion de la Casa. So basically, the transatlantic slave trade was managed and operated from here. When ships went out to get slaves, they had to come here to get the authorization, to get the numbers and the contract to do so. So let's go back to our map. So off to the left, you have the Inquisition. And then probably about 2,000 yards to the right, you have the Transatlantic Slave Trade Operation Center. Spanish Inquisition off to the left, headquarters. Transatlantic Slave Trade Operation Center, about 200 yards away, or 2,000 yards away, not 2,000. This is why you can't separate the Inquisition from the transatlantic slave trade, which what a lot of people try to do. Like, this is another one of those. I guess you can call it a paradigm shift. The paradigm shift was whenever folks talk about the transatlantic slave trade, they leave out the Inquisition, which operated at the same time by the same countries in the same places by the same people. So that's what it is, family. And if you're wondering what the highlighted section off to the far right, that's just another place where they moved to. So they were originally like the operation hub for the transatlantic slave trade was close to the docks. It was close to the river. If you can imagine ships coming in there to get their license to grab slaves. It was close to the river, but as time went on, they moved away and they moved to the right. So I just highlighted that just for FYI. So there you go, family. The Inquisition and the transatlantic slave trade, the operation hubs were about 2,000 yards from each other. And so today, the headquarters of the Spanish Inquisition, they turned it into a museum. But back in the day, it was called the Castillo San Jorge. Castillo San Jorge, right? And it was a massive, massive castle. Massive castle. Now, you can see what I have highlighted. The first word says, it is housed in the former headquarters of the Catholic Church's Tribunal of the Holy Office of the Inquisition itself, which adds an extra frisson to the visit. And then it says, the next highlighted section I have for you here, family, says, essentially, the museum consists of the remains of the Castillo San Jorge, the seat of the Spanish Inquisition. So it's not, I mean, they've knocked it down. There's only a remnant of it left. But I think like at the very bottom of the museum, they have like the remains of it. And just to show you, family, it says, as far as like the operations hub of the transatlantic slave trade, where it says it was initially housed in Seville's royal shipyards. And that's what we were looking at here when you saw the docks and you saw that first highlighted section off to the right of the docks. That's the location of the royal shipyards. This was a royal endeavor. All right. And it says it was initially housed in Seville's royal shipyards, from where it moved almost immediately to the Royal Alcazar, which is what was off to the right, conducting its business in this building until it moved again, this time to Cadiz in 1717. So from that location, the Casa de Contratacion, and just wanted to show you that in the Encyclopedia Britannica, it says the Casa de Contratacion, central trading house and procurement agency for Spain's New World Empire in the 16th and 18th century, organized in 1503 by Queen Isabella in Seville. It was initially headed by Juan Rodriguez de Fonseca, her chaplain and former overseer of the Columbus expeditions, and it became, an instrument of the Spanish Crown's policy of centralization and imperial control. Besides serving as general overseer of commerce between Spain and its American possessions, as the 16th century progressed, the Casa began controlling the African slave trade. Again, that was the operation hub, family, of the transatlantic slave trade right across the river from the Inquisition headquarters. It says scheduling ships and shipping routes, collecting duties. So basically folks had to pay taxes on all the slaves. It says, and maintaining royal revenues. All right. And we'll leave it at that. So that's a outside picture of the Castle de San Jorge. But of course, it's all, it's different now. But what you're looking at now, family, is a picture. This is from the 1600s of what the Inquisition castle looked like. It was massive. You can see it goes all the way up to the river itself, family. A massive, massive structure where they were torturing, burning, maiming, forced conversions, all that wicked, bad stuff that you hear about the Inquisition. That was the place where they were doing it. And then you see this long bridge going across the river right on the other side. And you'll see the ship docked off to the bottom right in front of the place where the transatlantic slave trade was. You can almost see, you can't really tell with some of these black and white pictures, but you can see dark what appears to be dark figures on the bottom right. So basically, this is where the transatlantic slave trade occurred. Bottom right, Inquisition on the top left. And here's another picture of it. See the bridge, although you don't necessarily see. I mean, you see the beginnings of the docks on the far right, but you don't see any ships. But you can see the castle to the left, the castle of the Inquisition. Family, it was a castle, massive castle. And then another important note about context, family, and even though this context might be a little bit off, but one of the things I did want to show you, family, is that 1619 did not happen in a bubble. Like when people talk about 1619, it's like, oh yeah, when Spain and they had this ship and their ship was raided and all this other stuff. Yeah, but what was happening in Spain at that time for context? So for context, in the early, in like 1609 or something like that. So the Jews were, there was two things going on, family. One was that in Spain and Portugal, they forbid the Jews to leave. Like they didn't want the Jews to leave. Why? Because they wanted their money. These black Jews were rich, family. They were rich. Think about it. The sons of King David, they were rich and they wanted their money. They didn't want the sons of King David to bail and to leave, take their money with them and leave Spain broke, because Spain needed some money. So what they did was that they put an edict out that forbid the Jews to leave. And while they were there, the Inquisition persecuted them, prosecuted them. Part of the mode of operation for the Inquisition was that they would accuse a person of heresy, of practicing Judaism or whatever. They would take that person, torture them indefinitely. Sometimes you hear of like 10 years or more underneath the church was where they would often persecute these people. I actually have a video where I actually read a reference about how the Inquisition was actually destroyed. Like when the Spanish army came up to that big castle that you saw, there was, they lost a lot of soldiers, but they finally took it and they fought their way into the main cathedral, in the main worship room. And they were looking for the prisoners of the Inquisition because they were told by the locals that their sons and their daughters were held captive in the Inquisition. And so as they were moving around, they couldn't see them. It was like, well, we don't see any jails. We don't see any holding cells, any torture chambers, anything like that. And of course, the priests, acted as though, they were just shocked and appalled that they would be accused of such a thing. And again, most I willing fan, I'll come back and I'll put a clip, or I guess a link to that video in the description of this one. But basically, family, what happened was that as they were, the soldiers were there, they were just about to give up. They say, well, I guess that we were wrong about you, Catholic priests. But then one of the captains, they grabbed a bucket of water and they threw it on the floor of the sanctuary. And then what they noticed was that the water started seeping into the cracks of the marble slab on the floor, which told them that there was a entry in the floor, a hidden entry on the floor, which led to them breaking open the floor, going underneath the sanctuary of the church. And there is where they found maimed, tortured, brown Israelites, right? And they took them out, and there was a whole chapter written about what happened. But that happened at that place, right? That happened at that place. But anyway, I digressed a little bit. But just to let you know, family, when 1619 happened, certain things had just happened in Spain. One was that they forbid the Jews to leave. But then the Jews paid Spain. It's like, hey, well, can you ease up on this persecution? Tell the Inquisition to leave us alone. You want our money? We'll tell you what, we'll give you all this money if you would just leave us alone. So Spain left them alone for a little bit. But then in around 1610 or 1609, that switch, that reprieve went away. And then the Inquisition persecution started back up in 1609 or 1610, lasted for many years up through 1619. That's why in 1619, when you see a ship come from Seville, from this very spot, right, where the Inquisition just started back up, that's where, and I'll show you too, the Inquisition had a policy of shipping out or expelling the sons of David. But anyway, let's take a look at here. So expulsion, you can see where it says expulsion of the Moors from Spain in 1609 through 1614. So this was a study of, they're just saying that, well, we see that there was Moriscos. When they say Moriscos, they're talking about black people. They're saying that, hey, when we did our research, we noticed that black people, or Moriscos, were being expelled from Spain. And this is kind of speaking to what I was talking about earlier, family, where it says in 1601, one payment of the enormous bribe of 200,000 ducats to Philip III, the prohibition was removed. The king promised that it would never again be enforced. So basically the Jews was like I said, they wanted their money, family. They wanted their money. So the Jews tried to short circuit that. It was like, look, you don't, I mean, this is, I'm kind of paraphrasing, family. It's like, look, you don't gotta torture us. We'll give you the money. So that's what they did. They gave him the money. It was like, we'll give you the money. You just leave us alone. So Philip took the money, 200,000 ducats, and he removed the prohibition that they couldn't, one, they could leave, and two, that they would be left alone, right? And it says the king promising that it would never again be enforced, and the right of the new Christians to immigrate to the colonies, both Spain and Portugal, was expressly granted. And it says the irrevocable permission was canceled in 1610. So going right up to 1619, this is why you see a fresh batch of people getting kicked out of Seville, Spain, because they reverse this agreement that they had in place. And so the Inquisition, so what this did, family, was that this gave the Inquisition a green light to start back persecuting its citizens. In particular, its Christian citizens who were baptized. Like the people here, family, that are still remaining in Seville, Spain, like these are the ones that were baptized, right? And remember, when we took a look at the very first African-American family in Jamestown, Virginia, we saw the term baptized behind the child, right? And we don't really know if that baptized was just referring to just the child or if it was referring to the child and the mother and father. More than likely, in my estimation, family, it was the mother and father because of the time that this occurred in. This occurred during a time during the Inquisition where all the families had to be baptized, right? They all had to be baptized. And also, family, based off of the status of a certain individual, that determined what happened to him per the Inquisition. So there's two people that were consistently expelled or exiled from Spain. Consistently expelled, exiled from Portugal. Two people, or two types of people. One, female. If you were a female and they were caught in the Inquisition, they would be exiled. And let me just read it to you here. So this is on page 299, and I highlighted this where it says, if a female, she shall be exiled to the, and it's usually all these three places: island of Principe, St. Thomas, and Angola. Pay attention to the order: Principe, St. Thomas, or Angola for females. And you'll see that in this book. What we're reading here, family, is a book that lists out the punishments of the Inquisition, right? So it says that, if a person was convicted of this is what happened to him, right? And so what we just read is if this is what happened if somebody was female. Well, what about the males? What happened during this time in the 1600s when the Inquisition had just gotten the green light to go back and start exiling people or persecuting people? What happened when the Inquisition folks got a female? Well, it says that they expelled them. But what if they were a person of stature, right? Let's read about it. It says, when the person condemned for this crime is noble or of such quality that it appears that he ought not to undergo the punishment of whipping or the gallows or the galleries, he shall be exiled. And notice the places where he's exiled to is slightly different. It says, he shall be exiled to Angola, Sao Tome, St. Thomas, or Brazil. So Angola, Sao Tome, or Brazil. Those three places. So if he's noble, if he's a son of King David, they're going to send him to Angola. They're going to send him to Sao Tome. They're going to send him to Brazil. Now, what's notable about that and how we can tell the difference between a ship carrying on a slave mission versus a ship on an Inquisition mission. And again, this is just supposition, but the way you can tell is when they leave Spain, when they go around Africa, if they stopped, if they were on an expedition for slaves, then we would expect them to stop in the slave coast, or we would expect them to stop at Elmina. Elmina is where slaves were kept, right? Right. You heard of the door of no return, Elmina Castle. But when you have a ship leave Spain and bypass Elmina, bypass the slave coast and go directly to Angola, that points to this ship being or having Inquisition cargo. Well, do we know that the San Juan Bautista bypassed those areas and went to Angola? Well, we'll take a look here. Let me just read this right quick. I forgot I had this slide up here, family. And let me just do a quick check of the chat. All right. Praise Most High. All right. So just finish up on the expulsion. It says, and if a regular, he shall be absorbed in the same manner. It says, and besides suffering the said penalties, he shall be deprived forever for having any vote or being elected. So basically, if it's a regular dude, he's going to suffer. He's going to be tortured and all that stuff. But then it says, but if the quality of the person and the circumstances of the case are such as to render it necessary to mitigate the penalty, he shall abjure at a salon of the holy office. That's that huge Inquisition office that you saw before, that castle, and shall be exiled for the period from 7 years to, where they going, family? Angola. The sons of David were sent to Angola. The nobles were sent to Angola. That's why when we see the San Juan Bautista, and it says like, well, hey, the San Juan Bautista came from Luanda. Well, Luanda is like the Portuguese. They only had one port in Angola, and that was Luanda. And so when we see the San Juan Bautista leave Angola, and they're going over to, somewhere over in the Caribbean, right? And they get raided or, robbed. There's a high chance that they have the sons of David on there in 1619. All right, so this is just one of the pieces of the puzzle, like I said, when putting this thing together. So doing the investigation work, family, we came across this, right? Because one of the questions that came up was, okay, so in 1619, these pieces are starting to fall into place. We have context of what's going on in Seville, Spain. We have the laws that are showing that, that at that time, the Israelites or the Jews, they had been given a reprieve, but the reprieve was taken away. So the Inquisition started back persecuting them, and that according to the laws that the sons of David were then supposed to be sent to Angola, right? And you saw the fate of the women as well, right? So we have a motive, right? And we also showed that the operation hub of the transatlantic slave trade was literally across the river from the Inquisition. Well, one of the things that came to mind in doing this investigation, family, was, well, if the people came from the Inquisition and they had to have gone through that operation hub, because they said like all commerce had to go through that operation hub in order to go down to Africa, right? They had to go to the Casa of Indies. Forgot you got to go up to the name. And so one of the things we started looking for, family, was a manifest. So we wanted to know, like, all right, so let's take a look at the paperwork of all the people that left just before 1619, because the way that the ships the way that the ships ran their route, like when they left Spain and Portugal, and they would dock at some point in time in Africa, sometime for years, family. So they would dock for months or years, and then they would leave Africa and then go over to the New World. So, when we tried to look at a manifest, we looked at a manifest from like the early 1600s, like maybe like 1614 and all the way up to 1619. And that document is called the Catalogo de Pasajeros Indias. Now, it's interesting, family, that this document, which speaks about slaves, the transatlantic slave trade, it's not calling them slaves, but it's calling them passengers. It was just one of the things that kind of just stood out, family, when we're looking at that. But I do want to call this to your attention, family, because this is one of the things that we're going to need help with, or I'll need your help with, family. And in trying to track down the passenger manifests of the slaves or the passengers leaving Seville in the 1600s, it led us to this book called the Contratacion. Let me go back. The Contratacion 5539. So they have different contractions, but the one that we're interested in, family, is contraction, or it says contracting 5539. So if any mishpachah or in Spain or in Portugal, and this is actually located in the archives over in Spain. But if you're able to help us out in acquiring this document here, the Contratacion 5539, it has multiple books in it, but the book that we're interested in is book number 2. Why? Well, because that book covers 1613, December 10th, through 1625. It has 510 pages. So if you're out there, we're just going to put this call out to Mishpachah that's over in Spain. If anyone has access to the Contratacion 5539, book 2, let us know. You can drop me a note in the email, benaiahforisrael@israelitejustice.com or .org. I'd appreciate it, because I just want to go through this document. So you see it there. And we believe that this book should have some interesting things inside. All right, and actually, family, like I said, we're gonna break this lesson up into 2 lessons. So, like I said, I wanted to keep it at an hour or under an hour, and already we are way over an hour. So I'm actually going to pause it here just before 1619. But before we leave, fam, I want to show you something. So one of the things I didn't show you in the video was, if you want to know what happened to the San Juan Bautista, you can actually see it in slave voyages. In slave voyages, what you'll find is that the San Juan Bautista in 1616, it left Spain. So this is why the Jamestown Museum could say that the San Juan Bautista left Spain, went over to Angola, and then from Angola came over to the West Indies, where it was robbed, because there are records that show this. So one of those records is referenced now. The slave voyages is not a primary source, but it actually gives you the sources that will lead you to the primary sources. And but you can see in 1616, the San Juan Bautista left Spain. The voyage number is 29651. So we do know that this ship that led to Antonio and Isabella Negro came from Spain. It came from Spain, and actually it was robbed not once but twice, because even in this entry you'll see where it was robbed once before it made it to Angola. So, but that's it for now, family. Like I said, I know we're way over an hour. I was hoping to keep it under an hour, but apologies for that, family. It just takes time to go through this information, but. And so we'll pick this up next time, family. And what we'll do is we'll take it from the San Juan Bautista just before 1619, and we'll start up with 1616, and then we'll take that into Jamestown, Virginia, and also read some additional information about what happened to the Negroes in Jamestown, Virginia, right? Because they didn't just disappear. They either took on different names, right? Or maybe they kept the Negro name. But one thing is for sure, family, the sons of King David are here. The sons of King David are here in the U.S. All right. Hallelujah. All right. Well, that's all I got, family, as far as the lesson for today. And let's see here. Most High willing, I'll like I said, I'll put some additional information in the description for this video, so just come back and check up on that. Feel free to like and subscribe, family, if you can. That goes a long way as far as getting this information out. And I definitely appreciate your love and support, family. I totally forgot to mention this at the beginning of the video. Thank you, family, for all of those who donated and helped our sister Anastasia and baby Nehemiah. Thank you, family. So we were able to work with their lawyer. A lot of great collaboration was happening in the background that most High willing, we will share all this stuff with your family. I'm telling you, because we have a lawyer that's part of our foundation. And so our lawyer worked with their lawyer, and there was some negotiation that took place because the prices are what they are, family. They're pretty expensive whenever you want to retain a lawyer. So we were able to negotiate certain things down. So because of that, we were able to pay it off faster. So it was just a blessing. A lot of chips fell into place for us to be able to do that. And of course, your help, family, the Most High working through you all helped us do that. And I can't wait, family. I can't wait until you hear the testimony of this sister and what really happened to her and her child. I mean, you'll be shocked. You'll be shocked that something like that happened. So anyway, well, love you, Miss Picard. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks for dialing in, or thanks for joining, family. Love you, and shalom.